We're in part 2 now, and we have receptors that we're working on here in the peripheral nervous system. And we've just turned the page, and we now have some new receptors here at this table. And we're taking a look here at Meissner's corpuscle, which is a sort of a delicate pressure receptor. Actually, it's rapidly adapting. There's a great deal of light pressure and discriminative touch involved, so it wouldn't include the lips, particularly think of baby's lips. It says here hairless skin, mom's nipples, and as I indicated to you before, that there seems to be a relationship going on between baby and mom, that there's a lot of biofeedback there going on. Fingertips would be also included here. Eyelids. Okay, so this is discriminative pressure touch. So we're in the dermis, but we're actually able to feel a certain amount of delicacy, you know. And over here we have a completely different kind of encapsulated pressure unit here called Pacinian Corpuscle. So this is Meissner's, this is Pacinian Corpuscle. And here we're sort of a little deeper in the dermis, and it's rapidly adapting. Again, this is deep pressure, right? So it's in the soles of the feet, in the deep part of our gluteal region where we're sitting and stuff like that. So sort of we're down below the dermis as well as in the dermis. We're in the hypodermis, and so we can feel when we've placed the weight of something in a particular position. There's joints involved and things like that, so proprioception is involved in that. And then we move on to these raffini endings here. And so these are involving stretch, deep pressure, stretch. They are not adapting, non-adapting, or very, very slowly adapting. So we're basically noting the position of our bodies. I know when my hands are stretched out, far away from my sides. I know when my feet are wide apart or close together, right? So it's positional. It's proprioception, very important. And we know where we are without adapting, without losing sense of it or losing consciousness of it. Okay, then we have muscle spindles. This will pick up some of this at a later time as well. Muscle spindles notes the stretch, right? And so proprioception, again, this is to do with such things as we're catching our weight, or someone's tossed us a object and we're catching it, and we might actually have a little stretch here because, ooh, that's heavier than I thought it was, and my hand goes down and I have to pull back up quickly. So it involves skeletal muscles, and in particular we're going to be involved in reflexive responses to the stretch of the muscle, so that we're adding a little bit of tone to the muscle so that we can hold an object that we're holding. The exact opposite happens with Golgi tendon organs, GTOs. Okay, they forgot to put the word Golgi in there. There's somebody named Golgi out there. Anyways, so this is sensing the tendon of insertion as well as origin, and its proprioception. And in this case, we're going to relax the muscle that's associated with the tendon. Okay, here we're going to increase the tone. They don't tell you that, do they? Why don't they tell you that? Here we're going to relax the tone, so that if I stretch a tendon on my triceps, because I'm using my biceps, right? So I'm using the front of my arm to flex my elbow, and in order to do it more easily, I cause the opposite muscle, the antagonist, the triceps, to relax. Okay, and so I pull on that triceps tendon, and the tendon says, oh, biceps is trying to flex. Let me just relax here so I can help out biceps. Okay, so triceps will relax for me, just the way you like it. Very important detail. Okay, then we have joint kinesthetic receptors. Okay, so we have that proprioceptive receptors in the joint capsules themselves. There's a couple things going on there. Is one that we can increase tone to a particular area, and another thing that's going on is that we have nocioception, means pain reception, or noting the pain. Okay, so we can note when we've pushed a joint a little further than it needs to or wants to go. Okay, so there's that right there, just the way you like it. Okay, then we have another area of detail where we have to consider the integration from sensation to perception. So the doors of perception, such as it is. Okay, we play with this a lot in our mind. So there's perception at all. That is to say, do we get a signal? There's the circuit level. Okay, so there's that. And then there's the, it's the receptor level. So does the receptor work or not work? Do we have a generator potential? Then it's circuit level. Then it's perception level, is what's actually going on. Can I recognize, or is something here kind of new and different? Okay, so that's where we have to go with this, and they map this out for us here, where we have receptors, we have circuitry, and then we have the interpretation of what just happened. Okay, and then we can store that information and we can have more experience. Might take a child a little while. It might take a child months for them to actually discover their hands. Once they've discovered their hands, look out. Almost everything can be in the air very soon. Right? I trained my son as soon as he discovered his hands and he started throwing everything in the entire house across the room. I blew his mind slightly by holding something in my hand and then placing it in front of him. He was just fascinated with that. And suddenly everything stopped going across the room and everything started to go inside of things or on things. Okay, so there was all these little stages that he went through with regard to what can I do with this object. I can throw it, I can place it, I can fill things up with it. He eventually learned how to use things as tools, learned how to tear my physics book apart. All kinds of good things happened at that level. Okay, so that's the deal right there. They talk here about some of the details, the graded potentials and all that kind of thing. What's in the receptive field? What is transduction? We have EPSPs and IPSPs until we hit threshold, right? So there's all of that sensibility going on there. We ultimately have to create generator potentials that are sufficient to cross threshold so that we finally get something to actually happen. And then we get this thing called adaptation. Even though we have a generator potential, we no longer respond to it sometimes, and that's called adapting. If you go into a room where someone has just vomited and you have to take care of the mess, so to speak, at first it's a little bit distasteful, but after you've begun working in there for a little while, 5-10 minutes, you've sort of gotten through the worst of the smell and you're beginning to adapt. Right, so you starting to stop smelling that. Same thing with cadavers. Cadavers can be very pungent in smell, but after you've been working for a little while, you adapt to smell and that kind of thing. So there's what's called phasic receptors and tonic receptors, and so these are the fast adapting or the cycling receptors, on off quickly. There's tonic receptors, which maintain a sustained response, so they do not adapt. In some cases, there's no adaptation at all with tonic receptors. They're just on. Okay, so in some cases we get phasic, in some cases we get tonic. You need to think about that. The second level here is going to be the circuitry and the processing of circuitry. And so in some cases things are multifaceted. There's a lot of information coming from multiple sources. And then we begin to put everything together. The more sources we have, the better our perceptual detection would be, because we've seen something, we've heard something, we've touched something. We get some fairly good ideas of what's going on at the perceptual detection. Sometimes it's so subtle you can barely even tell that it's there. Other times magnitude plays a big role. Spatial discrimination too. Is there two things going on or just one thing? Okay, and then feature abstraction is it velvet or is it a hard metal surface? Quality discrimination, which seems similar to me, but at any rate we do have very distinct receptors, some for sweet, some for bitter, some for salty. And then ultimately pattern recognition, is that my mother's face? Is that my best friend out there in the distance, or just somebody who looks like them? Okay, so those are the types of perception that we need to consider.